The pristine floors of Riverside Mall gleamed under the bright afternoon lights as Major Sarah Mitchell, dressed in civilian clothes, a simple cream sweater and dark jeans, browsed through the high-end stores. After 6 months of deployment, this simple shopping trip was supposed to be her moment of normalcy. Her fingers traced the soft fabric of a silk scarf, potential gift for her mother's upcoming birthday. She didn't notice it at first, the subtle shifts in security guard positions, the whispered conversations into radios, the suspicious glances. But 15 years in military intelligence had honed her situational awareness. By the third store, she knew she was being watched. "Could you please step away from the merchandise?" The first confrontation came at the Cartier boutique. The sales associate's voice carried that familiar edge of barely concealed prejudice. Despite Mitchell's immaculate appearance and professional demeanor. "I'm just looking," Mitchell responded calmly, her military training evident in her measured tone. "I'm interested in purchasing a watch for my father's retirement." The associate's skeptical look spoke volumes. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of our other retail locations." Mitchell felt the familiar knot in her stomach, that mixture of anger, hurt, and resignation that had accompanied similar encounters throughout her life. But before she could respond, she noticed the mall security guards positioning themselves near the store entrance. "Is there a problem here?" The head of security approached, his hand resting deliberately on his radio. 2 more guards flanked him, creating an unnecessary show of force that was already drawing attention from other shoppers. "No problem at all," Mitchell replied, her spine straightening instinctively. "I'm simply shopping, like everyone else here." But the situation was escalating beyond her control. Phones were out now, recording the scene. She could hear whispers, "What did she steal? They are always causing trouble." The prejudices were naked, ugly, and all too familiar. The local police arrived with surprising speed, almost as if they'd been waiting for such a call. Officer Derek Branson, his badge gleaming under the mall lights, approached with the confident stride of someone who'd already made up his mind about the situation. "We've received reports of suspicious activity," Branson announced, loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. "I'm going to need you to come with us." Mitchell's military training kicked in. Stay calm, assess the situation, maintain control. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. I'm a major in the United States Army. And I'm simply shopping for my family." Her words seemed to bounce off an invisible wall of preconception. Officer Branson's partner was already moving behind her. And she felt the cold metal of handcuffs against her wrists before she could say another word. The humiliation was calculated and public. They marched her through the mall's main concourse, past shocked onlookers and smugly satisfied security personnel. Every step echoed with the weight of centuries of prejudice, every stare reinforced the reality that her achievements, her service, her very humanity could be stripped away in an instant. "You're making a serious mistake," Mitchell said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. "I demand to speak to your supervising officer." "They all say that," Branson smirked, tightening the cuffs unnecessarily. "We'll sort this out at the station." The crowd had grown larger now. A sea of phones recording what would soon become viral footage. Among them, a young black mother pulled her child closer, their eyes meeting Mitchell's in a moment of shared understanding and pain. As they approached the mall's exit, Mitchell's military ID slipped from her back pocket during the rough handling, clattering to the floor with a sound that would soon echo through the halls of justice. The young officer who picked it up, Officer James Chen, felt his blood run cold as he read the credentials. Major Sarah Mitchell, United States Army, decorated combat veteran, current intelligence officer. His hand trembled as he held up the ID. "Sir," Chen's voice cracked slightly. "Sir, we need to stop." But it was too late. The damage was done. The videos were already uploading to social media. The story was already spinning out of control. And Major Sarah Mitchell, who had led troops into battle and served her country with distinction, stood handcuffed in a suburban mall, a living testament to the persistence of racial prejudice in America. The security cameras captured every moment, the initial profiling, the escalation, the excessive force. Each frame would soon become evidence in a case that would shake the foundations of law enforcement protocol and force America to confront its deepest biases. As the realization of their mistake dawned on the officers' faces, Mitchell stood tall, her military bearing unbroken despite the handcuffs. She knew, in that moment, that this humiliation would not be in vain. This would be the catalyst for change she never sought but was destined to lead. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the mall's glass ceiling, marking the end of what had started as a simple shopping trip. But for Major Sarah Mitchell, and for the country she had sworn to protect, this was just the beginning. Officer James Chen's hands shook as he held Major Mitchell's military ID, its gold insignia catching the fluorescent mall lighting. The young officer's voice cracked as he called out to his superior, Officer Branson, she's a major in Army intelligence. The atmosphere shifted palpably. Officer Branson's confident smirk faltered as he processed the information. Security camera footage would later capture the exact moment his face transformed from authority to uncertainty. Then to dawning horror. Remove those cuffs. Now. Chen's voice carried an urgency that surprised even himself. As the restraints fell away, Major Mitchell rolled her shoulders, her dignity intact despite the ordeal. The gathering crowd, still recording on their phones, witnessed the dramatic turn of events. Major Mitchell, Branson began. But she cut him off with a raised hand. Save it, officer. Your body camera is still running, correct? Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. Good. Because every second of this incident needs to be preserved. Within hours, the videos hit social media. First came the shaky phone footage from mall shoppers. Black woman handcuffed at luxury mall turns out to be military officer. Then, more details emerged. Major Sarah Mitchell wasn't just any officer, she was a decorated combat veteran with multiple commendations, a graduate of West Point, and currently serving as one of the youngest female majors in Army intelligence. The story exploded across platforms. #Justice for Major Mitchell started trending. News vans descended on the mall. But what truly turned the tide was the release of the security footage, obtained through an emergency FOIA request by civil rights attorneys who had already reached out to Mitchell. The footage was damning. It showed Mitchell shopping normally, the security guard's suspicious surveillance, the unnecessary escalation, and the excessive force used during her arrest. Split-screen comparisons began circulating, showing how other shoppers, particularly white shoppers, were treated in the same stores. CNN picked up the story first. Decorated Army officer racially profiled at luxury mall. Fox News followed, military leader mistreated by local law enforcement. The narrative transcended political lines. This wasn't just about race, it was about disrespecting a military officer who had served her country. Major Mitchell's service record became public knowledge. 3 tours of duty. Bronze Star recipient. Instrumental in critical intelligence operations. Photos emerged of her in uniform, commanding troops, receiving commendations. The contrast between these images and the video of her in handcuffs at the mall was stark and powerful. The mall's corporate office scrambled to contain the PR disaster. They issued a statement, "We are deeply disturbed by the events that transpired and are conducting a thorough investigation." But it was too late. Former employees began coming forward, revealing a pattern of racial profiling directives from management. Officer Branson's body cam footage was particularly revealing. His casual dismissal of Mitchell's protests, the unnecessary roughness, the smirking comments to fellow officers, all captured in high definition. When synchronized with mall security footage, it painted a comprehensive picture of systemic bias in action. The police department's Internal Affairs Division launched an immediate investigation. Chief of Police Robert Hayes called a press conference, "We take these allegations extremely seriously. The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." But Mitchell wasn't interested in mere administrative action. As she sat in her home office that evening, watching the story unfold on multiple news channels, she received calls from civil rights attorneys, military JAG officers, and even several senators. They all wanted to help, but Mitchell had her own plans. "This isn't about me anymore," she told her commanding officer during a late-night call. "This is about every person who's ever been profiled, every service member who's faced discrimination. Every American who's been judged by their skin color rather than their character." The mall security company fired the guards involved. But Mitchell's military training had taught her to recognize systemic rather than individual failures. She began meticulously documenting similar incidents, creating a database that would later become crucial evidence. Local civil rights organizations provided additional security footage showing a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Statistical analysis revealed that black shoppers were 7 times more likely to be followed by security and 3 times more likely to be confronted by police at this mall. As the week progressed, Mitchell's story became a catalyst for broader conversations about race, authority, and respect. Military veterans groups rallied behind her. Police reform advocates cited her case as a perfect example of systemic problems. Even conservative media, usually hesitant about such stories, found themselves unable to ignore the disrespect shown to a military officer. The young officer, James Chen, came forward with his own statement. "What I witnessed that day made me question everything about our training and procedures. Major Mitchell's dignity in the face of such treatment humbled me. We need to do better." By the end of the week, Major Mitchell had become more than just a victim of racial profiling. She had become a symbol of resistance against systemic injustice. Her military background, impeccable record, and composed response to the incident made her the perfect figure to bridge political divides and demand real change. As she prepared for her first major interview, Mitchell reviewed the security footage one more time. In her military career, she had learned that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons but with truth, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. This would be such a battle, and she was ready to lead it. Major Mitchell sat across from her legal team in a sleek downtown law office, her posture military straight as she reviewed the mounting evidence. "We're not settling this quietly," she declared, her voice firm. "This isn't about monetary compensation. This is about changing the system." Her legal team, led by renowned civil rights attorney Marcus Thompson, had assembled an impressive case. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage from 6 months of mall operations, testimonies from former employees, statistical analyses of arrest patterns, and dozens of statements from other victims who had come forward after Mitchell's story went viral. "They'll try to buy your silence," Thompson warned. The mall's parent company has already reached out with a 7-figure settlement offer. Mitchell's response was immediate, "Not interested. We're taking this all the way." The lawsuit she filed was comprehensive and strategic. It named not just the mall and its security company, but also the local police department and the city itself. The complaint detailed systematic discrimination practices, failure in training and oversight, and violation of constitutional rights. The military's response was unprecedented. General James Harrison, Mitchell's commanding officer, issued a public statement. "The U.S. Army stands firmly behind Major Mitchell. The treatment she received is not only an affront to her as an individual but an insult to every service member who wears this uniform." As the case proceeded, more evidence emerged. A former mall security supervisor provided internal emails showing explicit instructions to target suspicious individuals, with coded language clearly aimed at minorities. Police department records revealed a pattern of discriminatory responses to mall security calls. Mitchell's military background proved crucial. Her intelligence training had taught her to document everything meticulously. She worked with data analysts to create detailed maps of incident patterns, cross-referenced with demographic data. The results were damning. "Look at these clusters," she explained during a deposition, pointing to heat maps of security interventions. 90% of stops and searches involve people of color. In a mall serving a community that's only 30% minority. This isn't coincidence. This is policy. The case attracted national attention. Civil rights leaders rallied around Mitchell. Military veterans organized protests outside the mall. Social media campaigns kept the story alive with hashtags like #StandWithMitchell and #ServiceNotSuspicion. But the opposition was fierce. The mall's corporate lawyers argued that their security practices were race-neutral and based on objective behavioral criteria. The police union defended their officers, claiming they had followed standard procedures. Mitchell remained undaunted. During a powerful testimony before the city council, she stated, "I've served in war zones where I knew who my enemies were. But here at home, I'm treated as an enemy for simply existing while black. That ends now." The breakthrough came 4 months into the legal battle. An anonymous source provided emails from mall management discussing demographic control strategies. These documents revealed a deliberate policy to discourage certain shoppers through aggressive security presence. The police department's internal investigation, initially slow-walked, gained new urgency when body cam footage from other incidents emerged, showing a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. Officer Branson's personnel file revealed previous complaints of racial bias that had been ignored. Mitchell used her platform strategically. Instead of just condemning, she proposed solutions. Working with police reform experts and civil rights advocates, she developed comprehensive recommendations for security and law enforcement training. "We're not here to destroy institutions," she explained in a CNN interview. "We're here to transform them, to make them live up to their stated ideals of protecting and serving everyone equally." The pressure mounted. Major retailers threatened to leave the mall unless changes were implemented. The city council faced increasing calls for police reform. The mall's insurance company warned of skyrocketing premiums unless security practices were overhauled. 9 months after the incident, the case reached a critical point. The evidence was overwhelming, the public sentiment clear, and the defendant's position increasingly untenable. But Mitchell refused to simply accept a victory in court. "We need systemic changes," she insisted during settlement negotiations. "Written policies, mandatory training, independent oversight, and regular audits. Anything less is just window dressing." The resulting consent decree was groundbreaking. It mandated comprehensive reforms in both mall security and police procedures, established independent oversight mechanisms, and required regular public reporting of stop and search statistics. But Mitchell wasn't finished. She used the momentum to push for state-level legislation requiring similar reforms at all private security operations. The Mitchell Standards, as they became known, set new benchmarks for accountability and anti-bias training. The resistance she led wasn't just legal, it was transformative. It challenged not just individual actions but entire systems of power and prejudice. And it succeeded because Mitchell understood that real change requires both pressure from outside and reform from within. As the case concluded, Mitchell reflected on its broader significance. "This was never about one incident or one person," she wrote in an op-ed, "it was about confronting the everyday injustices that corrode our society. Sometimes resistance isn't just about fighting back, it's about fighting forward, towards something better." The autumn sun cast long shadows across the renovated Riverside Mall entrance as Major Mitchell stood at the podium, addressing a diverse crowd of community leaders, law enforcement officials, and media representatives. 1 year had passed since the incident that sparked a movement. "Today, we're not just celebrating changes in policy," she began, her voice carrying across the plaza. "We're celebrating a fundamental shift in how we think about security, dignity, and equal treatment under the law." The changes were visible everywhere. New security teams, thoroughly trained under the Mitchell Standards, moved through the mall with a different approach, professional, respectful, focused on customer service rather than surveillance. The security force itself had been transformed, now reflecting the diversity of the community it served. Officer Chen, now promoted to lieutenant and heading the department's new community relations division, stood among the audience. His role in speaking up during the incident had inspired other officers to challenge discriminatory practices within their ranks. Implementation of the Mitchell standards has resulted in a 70% reduction in discriminatory incidents while maintaining effective security, Chen reported during his presentation. Customer satisfaction is up, and for the first time in the mall's history, demographic surveys show our shoppers truly reflect our community's diversity. The transformation extended beyond the mall. The city had become a national model for security reform. Police departments across the country were sending representatives to study the new protocols. Major retailers were adopting similar standards in their stores nationwide. But perhaps the most significant change was in the lives touched by the movement. Mitchell invited to the podium Maria Rodriguez, a former mall employee who had lost her job after reporting discriminatory practices. "A year ago, I was unemployed and afraid," Rodriguez shared. "Today, I'm the head of community outreach for the mall's new management team. We're not just changing policies, we're changing lives." The military had taken notice too. Mitchell's handling of the crisis led to her promotion to lieutenant colonel, and she now headed a task force on diversity and community relations within the armed forces. Her experience became a case study at West Point. The mall itself had undergone a physical transformation. Gone were the intimidating security stations and surveillance displays. Instead, welcome desks staffed by trained community ambassadors helped create an inclusive atmosphere. Local artists' works, representing diverse cultures, adorned the walls. But our work isn't finished, Mitchell cautioned. Transformation isn't a destination, it's a journey. We must remain vigilant, continue to adapt, and always strive to be better. She announced the launch of the Mitchell Initiative, a non-profit organization dedicated to promoting equitable security practices nationwide. The initiative would provide training, conduct audits, and offer certification for businesses committed to inclusive security practices. Officer Branson, who had initially arrested Mitchell, had gone through his own transformation. After sensitivity training and community service, he requested to speak at the ceremony. "I was wrong," he admitted publicly. "My actions that day came from a place of bias I didn't even recognize. Thanks to Major Mitchell's grace and determination, I've learned to be not just a better officer, but a better person." The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a new mall charter, enshrining the principles of equal treatment and dignity for all. But Mitchell knew that documents and declarations weren't enough. Real transformation happened in daily interactions, in changed mindsets, in sustained commitment to doing better. As the crowd dispersed, Mitchell noticed a young black girl watching her intently. The girl's mother explained that her daughter wanted to be a soldier, just like you. Mitchell smiled, remembering her own childhood dreams and the obstacles she'd faced. "The true measure of our success," Mitchell reflected later that evening, "won't be in policies or procedures. It will be in the next generation growing up in a world where they are judged by their character, not their color." The transformation of Riverside Mall became a blueprint for change across America. But more importantly, it became a symbol of hope, proof that with courage, persistence, and strategic action, systemic change was possible. As Mitchell left the mall that evening, she passed the spot where she'd been handcuffed a year ago. The space had been transformed into a community gathering area, with a small plaque reading, "From this place of confrontation grew a movement of transformation." The security guard at the exit, a young woman wearing the new uniform with its community service insignia, smiled and opened the door. "Good evening, Colonel," she said with genuine respect. Mitchell nodded, knowing that while one chapter of the story had ended, another was just beginning. The transformation would continue, one person, one policy, one day at a time.